There's a room inside me I've kept locked for so long that sometimes I forget it's even there. It's quiet behind that door, but not empty. It holds the parts of me I rarely show anyone, not because they are dangerous or shameful, but because they are fragile. They are the thoughts that surface late at night when everything is quiet, the doubts that whisper when life slows down, the questions that make you stare at the ceiling at 3 in the morning and wonder if anyone truly knows who you are beneath the version you show the world. For a long time, I believed everyone had a room like that, a private place inside themselves where the unspoken truths lived, the fears you don't mention over dinner, the insecurities you hide behind confidence, the memories that shaped you in ways you never explain because explaining them feels like reopening wounds. And maybe we all carry something like that. But the strange thing about hidden rooms is that the longer you keep them closed, the heavier the door becomes. At first, it feels easy to ignore. You move through life laughing, working, loving, building relationships. On the surface, everything seems normal. People know you. They spend time with you. They think they understand you. But there is always a quiet distance. Not a dramatic one. Not something obvious. Just a subtle feeling that part of you remains unseen. And that distance grows in silence. It grows in the moments when someone asks how you're really doing, and you answer with, "I'm fine." It grows when someone tries to get closer, and you change the subject with a joke. It grows every time you edit your truth before speaking it out loud. Over time, you become very good at it. You learn how to navigate conversations without revealing too much. You learn how to show vulnerability without exposing the deepest parts of yourself. You become skilled at letting people feel close to you while keeping the most delicate pieces of your heart protected. And the world often rewards that. People admire strength. They admire composure. They admire the ability to appear steady even when life is chaotic. But there is a hidden cost to that kind of strength. Because when you protect yourself from being fully seen, you also protect yourself from being fully loved. That realization took me a long time to understand. For years, I believed love was something you earned by presenting the best version of yourself. If you were kind enough, thoughtful enough, dependable enough, people would stay. If you minimized your flaws and highlighted your strengths, relationships would last. So I became careful. Careful with what I shared. Careful with how much I revealed. Careful with how deeply I allowed someone to look into my life. And on the surface, it worked. Relationships formed. Friendships grew. Conversations flowed easily. People described me as open, approachable, honest. But the truth was more complicated. Because even while appearing open, there were still parts of me I never fully explained. Pieces of my story that remained unfinished sentences. Emotions that were easier to hide than to unpack. And that created a strange kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone. The loneliness of being surrounded by people who knew you, but not completely. It's a subtle feeling, but once you recognize it, you can't ignore it. It appears in quiet moments after long conversations. It shows up when someone says they understand you, and a small voice inside whispers, "Not entirely." And that voice isn't accusing anyone else. It's reminding you that the distance exists because you placed it there. Not intentionally, not maliciously, just carefully. Because vulnerability feels like standing at the edge of something uncertain. When you reveal your true fears, your past mistakes, your insecurities, you lose control of how someone might respond. They might understand. They might accept you. Or they might see you differently. and that possibility can feel terrifying. So many of us grow up learning that acceptance depends on performance. Be strong, be capable, be confident, be someone people admire. Very few people teach us how to be human in front of others. How to say, I'm struggling today. How to admit, I don't always feel like enough. How to reveal parts of our past that shaped us in uncomfortable ways. Instead, we learn to manage impressions. We share stories that make us look resilient. We talk about struggles that have already been resolved. We show vulnerability that feels safe because it no longer hurts. But the present struggles remain hidden, and that's where real intimacy begins to disappear. Because intimacy isn't built on stories about who we used to be. It's built on honesty about who we are right now. Right now we are uncertain. Right now we are learning. Right now we are imperfect. Admitting that requires courage. It requires letting someone see you before everything is neatly resolved. That idea used to scare me more than anything. Not because I thought people were cruel. Most people are kinder than we expect. But because revealing your unfinished self means accepting that you cannot control the outcome. You cannot guarantee someone will stay. And that uncertainty challenges one of our deepest fears, the fear of abandonment. Many of us quietly believe that if someone truly knew everything about us, they might decide we are too complicated, too flawed, too uncertain. So we manage the narrative. We share enough truth to build connection, but not enough to risk rejection. But here's the paradox. The very strategy we use to avoid rejection often prevents real connection from forming. Because connection grows when two people allow themselves to be seen without filters. Think about the relationships that feel the most meaningful in your life. They are rarely built on perfection. They are built on moments of honesty. Moments when someone admitted they were afraid. Moments when someone trusted you with something vulnerable. Moments when the conversation moved beyond polite surface exchanges and entered deeper emotional territory. Those moments create closeness because they require trust, and trust grows through authenticity. Not the polished version of authenticity we sometimes display publicly. The raw kind. The kind that feels uncomfortable at first because it reveals parts of ourselves we usually hide. But that discomfort often leads to something remarkable. Understanding. When someone hears your truth and doesn't run away, something shifts inside you. The fear that once seemed overwhelming begins to soften. You start to realize that your imperfections are not disqualifications from love. They are part of being human. And the people who truly care about you understand that. They aren't expecting perfection. They're hoping for honesty. The problem is that many of us spend years assuming we need to fix ourselves before we can be fully known. We tell ourselves that once we become more confident, more stable, more certain, then we'll open up completely. But life rarely works that way. Growth doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in connection. When we allow someone to witness our struggles, we create opportunities for empathy, for support, for shared understanding, and those experiences shape us. They remind us that we are not alone in our imperfections. Everyone carries doubts. Everyone carries regrets. Everyone has moments when they question whether they are enough. But when those thoughts remain hidden, they become heavier. They echo inside our minds without challenge, without reassurance, without perspective. Sharing them doesn't eliminate them instantly, but it changes the environment in which they exist. Instead of growing in darkness, they become part of a conversation. And conversations lead to healing. Not because someone magically solves your problems, but because the act of being heard transforms. how you experience them. There is something profoundly relieving about saying out loud what you've been carrying silently for years. It's like opening a window in a room that has been closed for too long. Fresh air enters. Perspective changes. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable simply because it is no longer hidden. That's the quiet power of vulnerability. It creates emotional oxygen. And once you experience that freedom, it becomes harder to return to the old pattern of silence. You begin to realize that protecting yourself from discomfort has also been protecting you from closeness. The relationships that once felt good begin to reveal deeper potential. Because every honest conversation opens the door to another. Each time someone responds to your truth with compassion, your trust expands slightly. You become more willing to reveal the next layer. And that process gradually transforms relationships. What began as polite connection evolves into genuine intimacy. Not overnight, not perfectly, but steadily. Two people learning that love doesn't require flawless individuals. It requires honest ones. People who are willing to say, "This is who I am today. Still learning, still growing, still figuring things out." And when someone hears that and chooses to stay, something extraordinary happens. The fear of being known begins to fade. In its place grows something much stronger. Belonging. The feeling that you don't have to perform to deserve connection. That your presence alone is enough. That kind of belonging changes how you move through the world. You become less focused on impressing others and more focused on understanding them. You listen more deeply. You share more freely. And relationships begin to feel lighter. Not because life becomes easier, but because you are no longer carrying everything alone. The hidden rooms inside you slowly open. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just gradually. One conversation at a time. One moment of courage at a time. Until one day you realize that the door you once guarded so carefully no longer needs to stay closed. Because the people who truly care about you were never looking for perfection. They were waiting for honesty. And honesty, once spoken, has a quiet way of transforming everything. Not instantly, not magically, but deeply. Because the moment you allow yourself to be fully seen is the moment real connection finally begins. There's a quiet truth about the human heart that most of us spend years trying not to notice. It's the realization that no matter how many people surround us, no matter how many conversations we have, or how many smiles we exchange, there are still parts of us that remain hidden. Not because we want to deceive anyone, but because revealing those parts feels like standing in the middle of a crowded room and speaking the one sentence you're not sure anyone is ready to hear. Somewhere along the way, we learned that love works better when we are careful. Careful with our emotions. Careful with our words. Careful with how much of ourselves we reveal. We become editors of our own personalities, trimming away the things that seem too messy, too complicated, too uncertain. And the strange part is that it often works. People respond well to the version of us that appears confident and composed. They feel comfortable around someone who seems stable, someone who seems to have life figured out. But comfort and connection are not the same thing. Comfort can exist even when two people barely understand each other. Connection requires something deeper. It requires honesty that sometimes feels inconvenient. It requires emotional courage that most of us were never taught how to practice. I used to believe that being loved meant being easy to understand. It meant being predictable, reliable, strong. The kind of person who didn't bring too much emotional weight into a room. So I learned how to carry things quietly. If something hurt me, I would process it alone. If I felt unsure about something, I would hide it behind humor or confidence. If I struggled with a decision, I would pretend I already had clarity. From the outside, it probably looked like maturity. But inside, it was something else entirely. It was fear. Fear that if people saw the full complexity of my thoughts and emotions, they might reconsider how they felt about me. Fear that vulnerability would turn admiration into hesitation. And maybe you understand that feeling. Maybe you've also had moments where someone looked at you and said, "You always seem so strong." And instead of feeling proud, you felt a strange kind of sadness. Because strength, in that moment, wasn't something you felt. It was something you were performing. That performance can become exhausting over time, not because pretending is difficult, but because it creates distance. The more carefully you manage how others see you, the harder it becomes for anyone to truly know you. And when people don't truly know you, their love can feel incomplete. It's like receiving praise for a painting when no one has seen the full canvas. There are colors hidden beneath the surface, textures that were never revealed, stories inside the brushstrokes that no one has asked about. The same thing happens inside relationships. People often fall in love with the version of us we present early on. The confident version, the capable version, the version that seems emotionally balanced and ready for anything. But real life isn't lived in those carefully curated moments. Real life happens in the spaces where we doubt ourselves, in the moments when we're unsure what decision to make, in the days when our confidence fades and we wonder whether we're moving in the right direction. Those are the moments that shape who we are, and yet those are the moments we're most likely to hide, because vulnerability feels risky. When you reveal your uncertainty, you give someone the power to judge it. When you admit fear, you risk being misunderstood. But what we rarely consider is the cost of not revealing it. When vulnerability is absent, relationships slowly become performances. Two people showing each other the parts they believe are most acceptable. Conversations stay polite and safe. Emotional boundaries remain carefully maintained. Everything looks healthy on the surface. But beneath that surface, something essential is missing. True intimacy. Intimacy isn't just about spending time together or sharing experiences. It's about allowing someone to see your internal world, your doubts, your insecurities, your unfinished thoughts. It's about saying, "This is where I am right now, even if it's not perfect." The first time you do that with someone, it can feel terrifying. Your heart beats a little faster. Your mind races through possible outcomes. Part of you wonders whether you should take the words back before they leave your mouth. But once the truth is spoken, something interesting happens. The world doesn't collapse. The conversation continues. Sometimes the person listening leans closer instead of stepping away. Sometimes they respond with honesty of their own, revealing pieces of themselves that they had also been hiding. And suddenly the relationship changes. The space between you feels different, less guarded, less formal, more real. It's as if both of you silently recognize that the performance is no longer necessary. This is where real connection begins. Not in perfection, but in mutual honesty. Two people acknowledging that they are still learning how to navigate life, still figuring out who they are becoming. This kind of openness creates trust in a way nothing else can. Trust isn't built by always appearing strong. It's built when someone sees your vulnerability and realizes you trusted them enough to reveal it. That realization carries weight. It says, "You are someone I believe will handle my truth with care." And when someone receives that trust respectfully, it deepens the relationship in a way that small talk and shared routines never could. But getting to that point requires letting go of a powerful illusion. The illusion that we need to become flawless before we deserve to be fully known. Many of us quietly believe that once we fix our insecurities, once we achieve enough success, once we become emotionally stable enough, then we will allow people to see the real us. Until then, we keep certain things hidden, but perfection is not a destination we ever reach. Life keeps changing. New challenges appear. New questions arise. The version of ourselves we are trying to perfect keeps evolving. If we wait until everything is resolved before revealing our true selves, we may wait forever. Meanwhile, the relationships around us remain stuck at a distance. People interact with the version of us that feels polished and complete, never realizing that a deeper, more authentic connection was possible all along. The irony is that most people are craving the same thing. They are also waiting for someone else to go first, someone else to admit uncertainty, someone else to reveal imperfection, someone else to say, "I'm not as confident as I appear sometimes." When that happens, something remarkable occurs. The emotional atmosphere changes. Defenses lower, conversations deepen. People begin speaking about things that actually matter to them instead of staying within safe conversational territory. And in those moments, relationships become transformative, because being understood is one of the most powerful experiences a human being can have. It reassures us that our internal struggles are not evidence of failure. They are simply evidence that we are human. Everyone carries questions they haven't answered yet. Everyone has made decisions they still think about years later. Everyone has moments when confidence fades and uncertainty takes its place. But when those experiences remain hidden, we start to believe we are alone in them. Vulnerability breaks that illusion. It reminds us that imperfection is universal, that every person we admire has also wrestled with doubts. Every person we respect has moments when they feel unsure about their path. Recognizing that doesn't make life easier, but it makes connection deeper. And connection, in many ways, is what gives life meaning. Not the superficial kind that exists in casual interactions, but the profound kind that emerges when two people feel safe enough to be fully themselves. That safety isn't created by rules or promises. It's created through repeated acts of honesty. Each time someone shares something real, the relationship grows stronger. Each time someone listens with empathy instead of judgment, trust expands. Over time, that process builds something rare. A space where neither person needs to hide. A space where uncertainty is allowed, where emotions are welcome, where honesty replaces performance. In that space, love becomes something different from what we often imagine. It's no longer about impressing each other or proving worthiness. It becomes about witnessing each other's lives honestly, supporting growth, accepting imperfection, and choosing to remain present even when things feel complicated. That kind of love doesn't happen accidentally. It happens when people decide that authenticity matters more than appearances, when they choose to risk vulnerability instead of protecting their image, when they realize that the deepest connections are not built on flawless personalities, but on honest ones. And once you experience that kind of connection, the old way of living begins to feel empty. The careful editing of your personality feels unnecessary. The effort of maintaining emotional distance feels exhausting. You start to crave something simpler. The freedom to be fully yourself in front of someone who understands that being human is inherently imperfect, And that freedom changes everything. Because once the hidden parts of you are no longer hidden, you no longer have to carry them alone. They become part of a shared reality, part of a relationship where both people understand that growth is ongoing, that certainty is rare, and that the most meaningful connections are the ones built on honesty. Not perfect honesty, just real honesty. The kind that admits, I'm still figuring things out, and maybe that's enough. Maybe that's exactly what love has been waiting for all along. There's a quiet moment that happens in every relationship when you realize you've been showing only part of yourself. Not because you meant to hide, but because somewhere along the way you learned that being fully honest felt risky. So you share the easier pieces, your laughter, your routines, the stories that make you sound strong. But the deeper parts stay quiet. The doubts, the fears, the moments when you feel uncertain about who you are or where you're going. The strange thing is that the more we hide those parts, the more distance we create without meaning to. People may care about us, admire us, even love us, but they're loving the version we allow them to see. And sometimes that creates a loneliness that's hard to explain. Real closeness begins the moment we stop performing. When we admit we don't have everything figured out. When we let someone see the unfinished parts of us. It's uncomfortable at first, like stepping into open air without knowing if someone will catch you. But that risk is also where real connection begins, because being truly loved isn't about being perfect. It's about being seen completely and discovering someone is still willing to stay.